So, hello everyone. We are here in the online discussion called Language Diffusion about translations in cities of literature. My name is Anna. I'm representative of Lviv UNESCO City of Literature. We are doing this discussion in Lviv, Slimani, Reykьявik, and Barcelona within the frames of 27th book forum in Lviv, which this year is going to be held online. So, as I told previously, we will today be talking about the translation with the next people. From Barcelona, UNESCO City of Literature, we are having here now Kарлota Gurt Daví. She is a Catalan translator who started her translation career with technical text, as well as IT localization and corporate communication. In the 5 past years, she has moved to literary translation as well as to theater subtitling. She is also a writer, and she recently won one of the biggest awards in the Catalan language, the Roda Reda Prize. Also from Slimani, we are having here now Shamal Abу Бакер Хусейн, who is the office coordinator of Slimani UNESCO City of Literature. Shamal is actually a master in English literature, bachelor in English language and literature, a Fulbrighter at Michigan State University, and a translator. He recently translated Mind Your Head and Get to Know Your Brain from English to Kurdish, which was published by the Ministry of Education in Kurdistan Regional Government. And from the city of Reykьявik, we have Mrs. Magnia Matthias Detier, please correct me if I said it wrong, who is a writer, a poet, and a translator. She has a master's degree in translation studies and is currently working on her PhD thesis in this field. She has translated many genres of literature for over 40 years, often along with her work, the last 10 years teaching translations, translation studies, and translation history at the University of Iceland. So those are our today's speakers, and let's start from the start. I have the first question that I would give message to all of you. Some of you are translators. Some of you are representatives of the cities of literature. And I would like to ask you, how does your cities of literature cooperate with translators? Is translation one of your priorities? So maybe I would start with Mr. Shamal, as he's the presenter of the City of Literature. So how do you cooperate with translators?
First of all, I would like to thank everyone here and to say hi for all the participants. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here with you. Actually, translation in our city is, I can say, in the highest priority, because especially for our office of UNESCO City of Literature, because we've got, as Kurdish people, we've got a very rich literary heritage that unfortunately has not been translated or introduced to the other languages sufficiently and efficiently. And also, translation for Kurdish people and my city is a means of getting together and networking and producing collective literature. And so far, thankfully, we have experienced that in a couple of the collective works with the other cities of literature. And the first one was calling for participation in COVID anthology that has been produced recently by 23 cities of literature. And we've collected works from those cities about COVID and as a kind of COVID collection. And finally, it has been produced and will be introduced to you soon. And the second initiative was calling for literary museum. We've got a kind of, we called for some of the cities, every city that can participate, and some of them have thankfully replied to that. So we've got one masterpiece of poetry or prose in the original language of the cities, translated into English, and we will translate them into Kurdish and will show them in a public show, like a literary museum in our city. And finally, translation is really important for us because we've got a great population and readership that can speak English language and other languages that would wait for great works to be translated both to Kurdish language and from Kurdish language to the other languages. And that's why the translation means a lot for us as City of Literature.
That's great. You know, the things you are doing while you are quite young as a City of Literature are really inspiring and amazing. Thank you so much. Maybe Magnia or Carlotta, do you have any thoughts of, as a translators, you can say from another perspective, how does your Cities of Literature cooperate with you as a personal translators or as a translators in general?
Well, Barcelona has been a City of Literature for 5 years, and I think that they first centered their attention on writing and on publishing houses or on connecting events and writers. And now this year they are starting a new program, which I'm in also. They are organizing some book clubs in the city's libraries. And then so a translator goes there with one of their translation, and you talk about the translation with the readers. So you can comment not only the book itself, but the process of translating, because it's very important that the people really get a little bit aware of what's behind a translation of a book and how is the process, so that they can really appreciate the work that's behind. So the City of Literature, they are now beginning this program this year. I think there will be 30 translators going around in the libraries and talking about their translations. And I know I've spoken with the office, and they are giving it a thought of having a kind of grant. They now have a couple of grants. They have one grant that's for writing any literary work and one grant for writing theater pieces. And they are now, wondering to make to create a new grant for including translators, so that you can propose, well, I would like to translate that, but it's still on progress. And they are also giving it a thought, the idea of having a residency, a space, a house, or somewhere where the people can meet, just like any other international residences, because it's very interesting to communicate with other colleagues, and especially with the Catalan language, that it's very important to us because it's just the language, the culture, and there are not many people who read Catalan, for example, in international publishing houses. So the Catalan literature usually gets there through the Spanish translations. So we have to, well, it would be good to work more on Catalan direct translations to get to the public, to the international public. So so that's my personal experience on that.
Thank you. And Magnia, do you have something to add at that point?
Well, I don't work for the Reykьявik City of Literature, so I don't really follow maybe that much with things they are doing. But they do work with translators, and they are very diligent in highlighting our association, our event, and translation work in general. So they've been very positive about that. And they also arrange events like last year, for instance, there was something called Letters to Iceland, where 2 British poets and Irishman came to Iceland and they had readings. And then their work was published in a bilingual language, both English and Icelandic. And that was, that was a big event for our very small nation. We are only 300,000, so we noticed things. And the City of Reykjavik always hires professional translators, which is great. Not necessarily done because people are always looking at the prices, and of course, pay higher rates to a professional translator than you do some guy who just does it for the hour or something like that. So I don't really know what to add about this. I'm very pleased with our City of Literature because they are always very positive and they're open to new ideas and willing to discuss them. So,
yeah, thank you. And as you, Carlota, mentioned, you in Barcelona are pretty active in new initiatives of supporting translators as grant as residencies, which is really great. And I would like to ask everyone actually in this room, are there any other programs already implemented for translators, to translators, or for editors, or for publishers in your cities of literature?
not specifically in the city. It's more on a national basis. You know, we have Icelandic Literature Center that gives grants to publishers and to translators and to writers. And they have, for instance, a grant for translations of Icelandic literature into a different language, a specific grant for translation from Icelandic to the Nordic languages, because we have this Nordic mafia. No, I don't know what to call them. We work greatly with the other Scandinavian and other Nordic countries because we are very culturally related. And then there are travel grants for writers and translators. And there is a residency grant for foreign translators to come to Iceland. So we can get grants for our work. And Reykьявík also has a grant system where everybody involved in the arts can apply. And that goes to translators too, but I don't think I apply much for that. I don't really support printed publishing. It should be something, you know, people can attend to or experience in a different way. So I don't know how it's applied for. So it's pretty much on an event basis. You know, if the Translator Association wants to hold an event, they can come to this literature and ask, would you co-sponsor this? Give us some money or lend us a house or something so we can hold the event. And that has worked out pretty well.
Thank you.
In the case of Barcelona, it's more or less so the same, that it's not it doesn't come from the city, but from the government. So we have mainly two lines from the Catalan government. One is they grant they give some grants to publishing houses and also to private translators to translate foreign literature to Catalan. And then we have the Institut Ramon Llull, which is an institution that fosters the Catalan culture in general, so beyond our frontiers. And in that case, they have some, so they manage some grants or some subsidies to help translate Catalan literature to other languages. So help internationalize the language. Yeah, and they usually put in context so they organize meetings in Barcelona from translators that translate from Catalan into their languages so that they meet. So it's a very active network and they are doing great work there. But it's not a matter of the City of Literature, but as a government, the Catalan government.
That's really great. And as I can understand, that's a permanent program. It's not only a program, so it's like a house. It's working since I know many years. They also help promote writers out of the country, so paying for the travel expenses when they go to book fairs or things like that. That's impressive. Shamal, maybe you have something to add at that point?
Yep. Actually, so far, since, as you know, we have been designated in 2019. So far, concerning funding the translation processes and activities. Mostly those activities are supported, as my friends mentioned, by the governorate of the city, and that raises funds for translation activities, and especially from and also supporting and publicly supporting and appreciating the translations that have been done by some centers that have been recently working in this field, like Pool Center, Jin, Sardam, Galawesh, Rahan activities. So we have been translating from Arabic to Kurdish, from Kurdish to the other languages, from English to Kurdish, and from Kurdish to English. Those were some of the activities that have been funded. But as far as the strategic plan for the office of the Sulaimani city of UNESCO, so we've got a couple of other initiatives that we will plan to work on, and both of them have got local and international faces. The first one is using translation and poetry as healing and reconciliation means and methods. In this initiative, we plan to call for different cities around the Iraqi provinces and the young translators to come for a residency program to Sulaimani and to stay there for a month to interact with each other, to translate, and to produce literary works together about peacemaking, about recovering, about resilience. The Iraqi regions are the aftermath regions of the war, as you know, because of Daesh war, and recently because of coronavirus. So we call those cities to come together, young generation to come together, poets and translators, and to stay together. And finally, we will produce a multilingual book that will be published in different languages, and we will make a tour around the Iraqi cities to announce that and to publicize this initiative. Also, there is another initiative that we want to build on Kashkol Center's pioneering translation project that has recently published 700 pages Kurdish translation and poetry into English. So we will try to fund that and to publish and translate each year around 4 books that will be translated from Kurdish to English. And those are some of the initiatives that we are working on right now.
That's great. And I need to mention as well as we have also participated in the Sulaimani project, that one with the poetry, when we have sent you poetry pieces on English that would later be translated to Kurdish language. And as I do remember, being disposed in libraries, which is
Absolutely.
great because those are connecting cities of literature and really making us one creative network, and the meaning of network of people who communicate with each other. And just to add, from the Ukrainian side, we do also have some governmental protection of our translation, which is really good because we have the Ukrainian Book Institute with its translation section, which supports translators as much as they are able to, and we are active in working, for example, at the Frankfurt Book Festival with the translators also. So we can see that that's a really great thing that government supports translation, as it is one of the, in my humble opinion, one of the most important things right now to connect cities, to connect countries, to connect the whole world. And as we did already talked about the politics, I would like to ask another question, which can be quite provocative, but I hope wouldn't be so. First of all, it would be to Kарлota and Magnia, because it's dedicated to translators as themselves. How do you feel? What maybe there's something you should translate and something you shouldn't, or you feel yourself full free in the field of translation in your country. Maybe there's something that wouldn't be published, or it's something that you want to be published but it could not be. So anyway, do you feel free in translating whatever you want in your cities of literature?
Absolutely. I can translate whatever I want. The question is, could I get a publisher for it?
Yes.
Like, for instance, if I translated Gormenghast by Merrill P, would I ever find a publisher that's really wouldn't sell? They always look at the money, right? But I'm absolutely free to translate anything. Political, pornographic, whatever. I can translate whatever I like. So I feel extremely free as a translator. But the limits are always in the publishing world, right?
Yeah, I agree. So in fact, I also feel free to translate anything, but it's not me the one choosing what's going to be translated or what it's going to be published. At least in my case, I never suggested a book to be translated, but it's the publishing house who decides that you have to translate this.
Yeah,
and in any case, probably some works wouldn't have market. So the talent market is small now. We are about 7 million inhabitants. So the population is not very big, and that's one of our problems, because we need really to make the market bigger, but it cannot get bigger. So maybe in Iceland it's the same. So so the problem is that maybe some works wouldn't find enough public to read it, and precisely for this is why we need some subsidies and grants and funds to be given to the translation, because otherwise the market cannot pay for the price for this translation. So even if you have to translate a very thick book, that's a lot of money, and it's difficult to really a return on investment. So that's why translation should be especially protected with languages that don't have more than 10 million or 12 million speakers.
Yeah, actually, I think the situation in our city is a little bit different, because translation process of literary works is still young in our city. As I've mentioned, so we've got a very rich heritage, literary heritage, but unfortunately they have not been translated into other languages. And from the other languages, the process of translating books has not been so widely spread. That's why I cannot predict what would be the type of the challenges that the translation processes would face in the future. But I know that there have been some regulations and protective policies for journalistic works, for social media recently in our city and in our region, Kurdish region. But I'm not sure about the experience of literary works. But as far as historically, I can talk about the situation in our city. In early 20th century, there have been some trends or individual attempts for translation, and they have been received widely and welcomed warmly by community, because the city is having a kind of, in the region, is having a kind of open norm of receiving new ideas and new thoughts and translation. But in 1990s, it has not been the same, actually. There were some political reasons for that, some religious reasons for that, some other reasons for some social reasons for that. But generally, I cannot predict that exactly.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but something happened to your camera and I cannot see you at the moment. Or okay.
I cannot see Shamal nor Anna.
Yeah.
But...
Is it okay right now?
It's better now.
Psychedelic.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? I hope.
Yes.
Okay.
That's good.
So thank you so much. Now we are coming from the general questions to concrete questions. And here we have translators from the cities of Barcelona and Reykьявik. And I would better want to start from Barcelona because your case and everything that you previously said about the Catalan language is really exciting. I know that because we had an experience the last year, we've held the Lit Transformer project here in Lviv, which was actually a translation workshop during 10 days held by the director of MFA in Literary Translation in University of Ayova, Aaron Aji. And here we had two actually translators from Barcelona. One of them was translating to native language, so it needs to native language, and the other one was translating to Catalan language. And at every point connected to Catalan language, those people were very active, which means you are all very active in the questions of Catalan language and protecting it and translating into Catalan, or more translating from Catalan.
Yeah, well, yeah, Catalan language, so translation into Catalan, it's very important it's almost could be a political issue, right? Because so language is very connected to the political conception of our country, if we can say that Catalonia is a country or not, and blah, that, right? And especially Catalan is, it suffers from being from the neighborhood of Spanish and from the cohabitation with Spanish. So since both languages are living in the same territory, both get mixed up. So in fact, nobody really speaks perfect Catalan or perfect Spanish because we just get confused sometimes, right? So and besides that, Catalan is sometimes minorized. So especially in big cities, people speak a lot of Spanish, probably due to bigger immigration, right? Because so if they have to choose, what should I learn, Catalan or Spanish, people learn Spanish. So that's why translating into Spanish and having a real culture, a live culture, a culture that is alive in Catalan, so it's very important. And there's also issues on linguistic issues. For instance, when you translate slang from any language to Catalan, it's a problem because many people on the streets, when they have to insult one another, they use Spanish or Spanish expressions. So the Catalan slang, it's not so developed as the Spanish one. But so there are also many issues. And so in my case, for instance, when I translate from German and English into Catalan and Spanish, but when I translate literature, I only translate to Catalan because I feel that Catalan is my language. So it's a language that I can somehow feel I have a different sensitivity, right? So I can translate corporate communications into Spanish, and that's no problem. I do it, every week, in fact. But when it comes to translating emotions, I really can. I feel I just can translate into Catalan because it's the language I have been, I have spoken in my childhood, and that's what connects words with emotions, right? So I just got lost right now. So the Catalan, the promotion of Catalan languages, and it's very important in our special field. I don't know if that answered your question. So maybe you want to repeat it or.
You totally did, and your phrase about that the Catalan is language of your emotions is really strong, because that's your native language, the language of your childhood, which is very important, I think. It doesn't matter whether it is official or not that official, but still it's your language of how you feel.
Yeah, and for us it's official, and I think that sometimes internationally it's misinterpreted in the sense that Catalan, it's just like I know, Italian or French. It's not like a small dialect that only 4 people speak. So it's a real language and millions of people speak it. And so in my normal language, in my normal life, in my everyday life, I only speak Catalan. So, and I think that internationally, it's not really well perceived, right? Because since we are in Spain, and that's why we should fight for that, translating and creating a real culture in Catalan.
And also, I would like to ask about your connection with the City of Literature. Does it somehow cooperate with you as a translator, and does it somehow protect the Catalan language? Of course, it do, because we know. But tell us something more about this side of being Catalan City of Literature.
Yeah, so in fact, regarding the City of Literature and Catalan, so they are not connected. So I know last week or 2 weeks ago, so there's a recurring issue that comes up in Twitter and in the social media, that it's whether literature written in Spanish, but written from someone who is in Catalonia, is that Catalan literature or is that Spanish literature? So, and that is the debate that comes so every year, it's like, oh, it's like Christmas. No, every year in December we have that. So every year, once a year, we have this discussion. Oh, yes, it's Catalan. No, it's only Catalan if it's written in Catalan. Otherwise, it's Spanish literature. So it's difficult to really put a limit there. So, so in my case, you asked my relationship with the City of Literature. I don't have any really direct relationship until this year, because as I mentioned before, I think that they firstly centered on the writing and reading, so and events and literary events, and now they are kind of taking into account other aspects of the literature. And so this year I'm beginning to work with them with this book clubs around the libraries in Barcelona, and I'm really thrilled to do that because it's very interesting too. I once had a book club with some readers, and it's very interesting how you can explain the process of translating, so that the people they always say, oh, I never thought about that. So it's like you just open their eyes, and they can somehow feel and understand the translation decisions that you have taken. When you translate, you always have to decide things. So, and you can discuss that with the readers, and that's very interesting. So I'm really thrilled about this program going on this year with the City of Literature, and we'll see how it goes. But before that, I had never had any contact or direct activity with them.
Please keep us posted about the project that you just mentioned, because it sounds like really an interesting and the project and the thing you need to do. I think that could be actual for our city also. And I would like to ask Magnia now whether you have any cooperation, like straight cooperation with your City of Literature, with the Reykьявik City of Literature, because as we also know from our previous connection during the Lit Transformer workshop and this year's Lit Transformer workshop call, which was unfortunately postponed, you have such a great literary community in Iceland. It shows a lot.
That's absolutely true. But direct contact and direct cooperation with the Reykьявik or the Reykьявik Literature is. I used to have more contact with them while I was chairman of the Association of Translators and Interpreters. But and I have also worked with them as an individual translator on special, where I come in as a translator working with maybe a translator, a Polish author, in a seminar or a reading or whatever. And Reykьявik has a very, very good policy in human rights and inclusiveness. So they really don't look down on us smaller prophets, that the translators, they treat us like what we are, writers and authors in our own right, create translations. So you never, you always, they always welcome you with open arms when you with an idea of something that you really want to present. But in the later years, I haven't really interacted much with them. I don't really know what they are doing at the moment, I'm sorry to say. But Icelandic is a very small language. You know, slightly over 300,000 speakers. So we are very jealous of this language. I take good care of it. It's a bit like with Catalan. You have to, you have to look after your language. You have to cultivate it. And you constantly have to add to it, you know, new words, new concepts and things, and that happens late. And we wouldn't probably be speaking Icelandic if we did translation. Because the written Icelandic, you know, in the year 1200, it basically existed because of translations. They were trying to make us a Christian nation, so they translated all kinds of stuff to teach us. And we read that, and then that has kept Icelandic going. Well, not only Christianity, but you know, translations have kept Icelandic going throughout the ages. And we are an island nation, so we would be very insulated from the world if we didn't get input from other countries, and that happens through translations. And I think, well, not every Icelander, but most Icelanders are very aware of these facts. We are very open towards translations. And we read a lot, or we used to read a lot. Now we maybe listen more to books than we are reading them. The younger generation, it's nice to have headphones and listen to a good novel, you know. So, well, I'm completely lost the thread. I was trying to answer your question, but I haven't done that.
That's okay, that's mind flow. And I would like also to ask you, as well as I did ask Carlotta, are you more translating into Icelandic from English or other side? From Icelandic to English?
We translate from, I personally translate from English and the Scandinavian languages, mostly Danish and Norwegian. But here in Iceland, we translate from, if we have somebody who knows a foreign language, he is probably a translator, or she, he or she. So, you know, there was a call some years ago, do you know somebody who can translate from Portuguese? Because the guy died, and then he didn't have a translator, nobody who could translate from Portuguese to Icelandic. Then there were 2 or 3 young people that, yeah, I know Portuguese, and they started translating. It's this way for small languages, you know, you are very dependent on the people that speak.
And that's a problem for quality sometimes, because if you depend on, okay, I found someone who translates, but maybe he's not a good translator, and you can do nothing about it because there's no one else, right?
That is that. Yeah, there is that. But fortunately, I forgot to mention it before, that the Icelandic Literature Center also has seminars for translators where they meet and there are workshops and training sessions and stuff like that. And Reykьявik City of Literature has participated in and does participate in things like that. And they also support the House of Dignities. I don't know if you have heard about that. It was founded by Vigdís Finnbogadóttir, our former president. And it's dedicated to linguistic diversity, language diversity. And every language has a home there, which is really so. And the city of Reykjavik supports and the libraries, of course.
Great.
also few. It's more on a personal level, the contact here. You meet somebody or you know somebody or it's a person that he can introduce you to somebody else or stuff like that. So it's, I don't think the people at the City of Literature, regular City of Literature would be surprised if I have an idea at 10 o'clock in the evening, I just phone them, you know, at home. It would be discourteous, of course. It would be very rude, but they wouldn't be surprised.
Tight connection you have. That's great. That is really great. It sounds like that really excited me at that point. How do you cooperate? And maybe Shamal, you are not you are a translator, yes, but you are a presenter of an office here. And how straight do you work with the translators in your office? Do you have any proper people that are currently or permanently in some of your projects or in your future projects as you are a young city of literature?
Yeah, actually, as I've mentioned before, since the process of translation is young and our city has been designated recently, so we are working on that, and we've got some efficient plans for that. But in the time being, there are some centers that have been working on translation, like Kashkol Center, like Serdam, like some others. And Kashkol has been initiated by some great, hardworking instructors, American instructors in the city that have established a group of translators, including Shene, as she will later on join us and talk about that in detail, including Sarwar and some other Peshawar and some other translators, Muhammad. So they are working on translating from Kurdish language into English language and into some other languages. So those people are dedicated to their job, and they are efficiently doing that because they've got access to some good resources, and they've been trained on translation by Marie Labros and David Shook, which are both well-acquainted translators and publishers as well. They are poets as well. So they supervise them. They have trained them. They gave them enough knowledge and experience in that. And I think it's going well, hopefully, in the coming years. And we will see the fruit of that in the coming years, hopefully.
Thank you. And here, as our conversation is going up to the end, I would like to ask you one more question that would be regarded to all of you. And that's an accidental thought that just came in my mind. But we were talking previously about the new normal, yes, about the future after the pandemic and after the quarantine. And how do you think this new normal will impact the translation in your cities of literature or the translation in general?
Well,
any thoughts?
For Iceland, I don't think it will change very much. Like I said before, we're very dependent on translations for everything. Sometimes a fourth or a third of everything published in Iceland is translated. It goes way back to half of every translated work. So we are very used to translations as a form of literature. I don't think that will change. Maybe the publishing form will change some way. Maybe we are going to depend more on audiobooks or what do I know? You know, some other technology and a print book. But translations and such won't change. There is no computer inside that can really translate literature. They may think they can, but they can't. For the emotions, like Kарлota said.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that in the Spanish or in the Catalan market, during the pandemic, there has been a stop. So people stopped publishing because they didn't know. So everybody is kind of expecting what's going to happen now. So life re-begins in September for everybody. So, okay, now we are going to see what happens. In September, we are expecting a lot of new titles in the market, maybe too much because the chains in the publishing houses were stopped. So lots of books were waiting and they are now all going out at the same time. So probably the market cannot absorb that quantity, the number of new books. And it's not clear if, I know some publishing houses who are asking for credits because economically and financially, the pandemic has really had a great impact on them. So everybody's kind of, let's see what happens. There's the kind of fear that maybe some small publishing houses would close or will have, shut down. So it's a kind of uncertainty. The uncertainty that it's everywhere. It's also in the publishing market, I think. And I think that the new normal will worsen one of the issues of the translators. That is that we work alone at home. So we are already isolated from the world. But since the world is extra isolated, we really don't get to see no one. And that's not good because we are very vulnerable. No? So it's always one translator and a big publishing house, or it's a small house. So it's one translator against you know what I mean? So in front of a company, and you always feel that you don't have enough force. That's why it's very important to have associations, translators associations. We have several ones here in Catalonia, and I think it would be good that the cities of literature as such would somehow defend the interest of translators as a collective. For instance, in Catalonia, we cannot speak publicly about the prize we get for translating because it's against the competition, the free competition market, blah blah. So we are really exposed to how it goes the market, and we are alone. So I think that maybe the new normal will worsen these conditions that we work in.
Yeah, actually, I think the pandemic will change many things. Among the things that it will change, I think, the style of gathering of people. Before, many big cities were like economically based cities, just like I can say financially related people, relating people together. But the new normal would become like people-based cities, just like if there were big markets before, cities like big markets, it will become more like big villages rather than markets. So the connection between people would change, and the focus of people would get more focusing on human interaction, emotions, and I can say ontological things and longings. That's why the value of literary works will raise, I think. And here, translation maybe locally is going to flourish, but not internationally, because people will translate for their own local languages, and it will be more needed and demanded by people. That's why I think the cities of literature would have a great role to do in that. For example, to cooperatively work on reviving the common concerns of human beings for their common cities, just like corruption, like pollution, like fighting against war, against pandemic, reviving human values, for example, reviving just valuable kinds of getting together instead of virtual connection that will be interrupted by the internet coverage from time to time. So those kinds of intentions and tendencies would emerge, I think, would maybe a kind of new way of translators to work on. This is my impression generally.
Thank you so much. I do agree with you that we, as a series of literature and as a project managers working in literature, have now a really very important role to do, to connect people, to activate people again, to make them understand that nothing is stopped, that life is going on, and that literature is moving as it is moving now, and very, I can say, I don't know, very actively, yes. And also what you have mentioned, and I would say it as the ending phrase of this conversation, let's stay connected. We have an internet now, of course, and it helps us. It provided this today talk, but still, let's stay connected. And I thank you so much for this conversation, and I hope that one day we would go out of StreamYard to the live connection once again in any city of literature. And thank you again. Thank you, that was great.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Hello again. Here we are at the second part of our conversation about the translation in cities of literature, which is going in frames of 27th Book Forum in Lviv, this year held online. And I'm Anna, representative of Lviv's UNESCO City of Literature office. And here today we have Sheen Mухамед, a representative of City of Slimani. Sheen Mухамед is actually an MFA student in literary translation at the University of Ayova. She has worked as a researcher and assistant director in Kashkool, the Center for Arts and Culture at the American University of Iraq, Slimani, to support regional cultures through digitalization, preservation, and translation. She was also an instrumental in helping Slimani receive its 2019 designation as a UNESCO Creative City of Literature. And we are here today to talk about translation, as it was mentioned before. So, Sheen, I know that you are now in the city of Ayova at your MFA program in literary translation. That's great, because the last year and the year before, first held in 2019, the same year you've got a designation as City of Literature, we had a project, a Lit Transformer translational workshop together with Aaron Aji. He is actually the director of MFA program in University of Ayova. And I would like to ask you, how do you like it, being there, being part of such a great translation program? And how do you like being in Ayova City of Literature? And how does it differs from Slimani City of Literature?
Yes, so I feel very lucky having come from one city of literature, moving to another city of literature. There's a lot of similarity between the energies in both cities, and it's a very, and the energy is in its artistic environment. So I do hope to see more cities of literature in the world in the future. But I think for the difference, what I've really enjoyed in Iowa is more hybridity in the environment. Like I get to be part of this writers workshop. I get to be part of other departments when I need more resources for my translation. I get to take history classes if I need, if I feel like I need it, and it will inform my translation. So I've really enjoyed more variety in Iowa. The same kind of resources and energy, I could say I feel in both cities. But as I said, in Iowa, there's just a lot more variety. But also I've enjoyed, excuse me, I've enjoyed a greater translation community. Which is it's a very exciting place for a translator to be in.
Well, you know, you've mentioned the translational community, translators community, and I do remember how other participants, like from Reykьявik and Barcelona, they were also translators, they are also translators, and they did already mention the importance of translational community in their cities of literature. And I just remembered another question, which could be also an option for you. As a translator, do you feel any, support from a city of literature like Sulaimani City of Literature or from Ayova City of Literature, despite the program that you're working on? Do you feel any protect in what you are doing? For example, from a government or from City of Literature office?
So in Sulaimani, I really can't think of or point to, a policy or a rule, something that would protect me as a translator or provide me with the resources. But I can point to, centers and other institutions that would support translators by providing training and resources. In Sulaimani, I feel like I was prepared for my studies, for my MFA in Iowa from Kashkul. Kashkul is the Center for Arts and Culture in Sulaimani, and I was really trained because I've worked with developed translators as well as young translators, even though this Center for Arts and Culture operated inside the American University of Sulaimani, but we have all kinds of projects, translation projects, in collaboration with translation students in other universities within the city. So I actually collaborated as co-translator with translations from, Sulaimani Public University. And I think it's a very great training for translators to have support from each other and to have support from a center to facilitate that link, to facilitate that connection. I was also in Kashkul, I was also trained to be better reader. I mean, we always had trainings of characterizing poets, creating poets' profile, how to use all of this to aid your selection process. All of these are very important points in becoming a better translator. But also, one other specific thing about Kashkul was that different translators worked in the center and worked on different projects. So we were always connected, and we always learned from each other, even though our challenges were different, our projects were different, their nature was different, but we lived in the same environment, and we had weekly check-ins. We updated each other about our process, and we were each other's support. So there was, even though the community was small, but there was a lot of learning and a lot of exchanging of our strength and learning from the other person's strength. I feel like this is the kind of support I got from Sulaimani City of Literature, from Sulaimani as a city, and in Iowa, all of the support I've seen is, of course, from the program, which is tremendous. It's really, I'm grateful for both cities.
Thank you. Those are great answers. And maybe that's going to be the last question, but, what you were telling about the community again reminded me of the quarantine times that we are now living through, all of us. And does anything changed in Kashkul Center, for example, or will anything changed in Kashkul Center, or will anything generally change? Do you think about the after the quarantine, after that we have stayed in our houses for such a long time, and we didn't have any communication, like live communication with people? We have called it, the new reality. And how do you see the new reality for translation and for Kashkul Art Center? What do you think of it?
I think for sure a lot of things changed. I mean, everything is different about these days and about what is happening currently. But we have found new ways to still be in communication, even though they're different. But we've still looked for other alternatives, and I think there seem to be good alternatives so far. But for sure, all kinds of projects are now becoming smaller, but that's only in operation. It's not smaller in what they really hold. And I think it doesn't make any kind of difference on what it will turn out to be in the future. Even though I'm not really, currently I'm not directly part of Kashkol, I'm there as a support for any kind of project they require me to, and they are there for any kind of support I would require from them. But currently all of my time is for my studies and translation projects here. But I'm sure whatever smaller ways are occurring, like whatever has become smaller than what it has used to will easily become bigger again when things are different and when there's opportunity too.
Things will become bigger again. We do surely hope that, for sure everything's going to be different. But as a city of literature and as a representative of city of literature, I need to mention that we would do in our city, and I'm sure in Somali City of Literature also, we would do everything that is possible, that is in our power to, to make things going the way they did before, or even better than they did before. So thank you for your answers, and we'll hope to once see you sitting in front of the big audience of people in life somewhere, maybe in Lviv. We hope in Lviv. So by now, thank you.
I really hope so, to be physically there someday. I think I'm sure there's a lot to learn from in each city of literature. So I'm very happy I'm here right now, but I'm looking forward to be physically in Lviv someday.
Thank you.
Sure.
You will be welcome.